Good morning, boys and girls. Here I am again. Thank you for that handful of you who have so far done the little video survey I sent out. I really appreciate your input, and I would also very much appreciate if at least some of the rest of you would give me your input. I can't really respond to concerns if you don't tell me what those concerns are. But right now, the responses are running about 2 to 1 in favor of doing more videos. And so I'm going to do more videos, but I'm going to make some changes in accordance with some advice that I got from your colleagues who have done the survey so far. I got 3 pieces of advice that I thought were right on and really along the lines of things I was thinking of already. So the first one was someone mentioned that the background noise was bothersome, and I totally agree. I've tried sitting in different rooms in the house, and this room that I'm sitting in now, which is my home office, seems to be the quietest room in the house. However, you will notice, if you can see, I'm up underneath the eaves of the house, and because of the shape of the ceiling in this room, there's a little bit of a weird echo that I hear when I play the videos back. But it seems like it's probably the best I can do with what I've got to work with. So I'm going to make most of the rest of the videos in this room. It's getting warm enough here now I could even probably go outside and maybe see what it sounds like outside, although there's lots of birds and stuff around here, so that might be even worse. So that's one. The second one, and I completely agree with the person who suggested this, and by the way, your comments are completely anonymous. I have no idea, except for the one person who signed her comments, I have no idea who made the comments. But the second bit was, and I totally agree with whoever said this, was that the videos tend to run a little bit long. I'm noticing the last couple I've made have been close to half an hour. And that's partly because I treat these things as conversations. Even my classroom lectures, when I'm in a classroom with students, are kind of conversational and not formal. And so I tend to wander off track once in a while, and I tend to repeat myself more than I probably need to. So what I'm going to do in accordance with the suggestion that this person made, and I think it's right on, I'm going to give you more videos but shorter ones. I'm going to try to break it up into 7-minute segments or so, and I'm going to try to stay more focused on the subject at hand, which will be both useful for both you and me. And the third suggestion was, and I also agree with this one, I think it's a great idea, I'm going to give you little summaries of each lecture written down, so it helps me stay on track and it helps you stay on track as well. So all 3 of those suggestions came from your colleagues, and I think they're all right on. Remember, I'm still kind of learning how to make these videos. It's something I'm trying for the first time this year, and this is the second semester I've tried it, and I still have a lot to learn. And constructive suggestions and criticisms from my student colleagues are always welcome. So, enough of that. This is the lecture about the section in Suggs that begins on page 272. That's the little short story in the book of Ruth. We've talked before about this transition between from a sort of a servant culture in Egypt to a military garrison type culture as they're camped before Canaan, or Canaan if you wish to pronounce it like that. Then there's the conquest of Canaan, which we see in Joshua, that sort of shock and awe business that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And then there's the awakening of reality transition, in which they realize that they're going to have to assimilate and accommodate the people. You can't just walk in and carpet bomb them, destroy the entire culture, and take over. That's what God tells Joshua to do, clearly. But or what the writer has God tell Joshua to do. Let me be let me be clear about my own terms. And then there's a transition in which a lot of the literature that's produced is literature about the fact that never works. as an approach, and you have to assimilate, accommodate, intermarry, and so forth. And so the process of reality when you get into this land that you're taking over is that there are other people already living there, and you have to deal with those other people. You can't just destroy them. That doesn't work. And so there's a whole transition from the military conquering shock and awe kinds of roll in and carpet bomb approach to, well, these are people and this is their land and we are taking over their homes and we have to accommodate them. And there's a lot of material in this latter period that deals with that. And then finally we get, at the end of this cycle, we get the total establishment of the culture as a civic culture with its headquarters in Jerusalem. We also see the leadership in the literature moving from generals, a military organization with generals like Moses and Joshua, to a more civic organization with the judges taking over from the generals. And then we see finally, we haven't gotten there yet, but we'll see finally the call for a king. Now, when we get to that part, we're not there yet, but we'll see that some people want a king and some people don't. And the literature is going to divide itself along that way. But where we are right now is largely, in this little short story, is largely the literature commenting upon the fact that one has to assimilate, accommodate, intermarry, respect the indigenous cultures. And this particular little piece of writing is an absolutely classic short story. It has all the elements of a short story. Now, the form of the short story wasn't really invented until the 19th century. So we can't claim that this writer set out to write a short story, because short story per se didn't exist. But we can say that the same elements that became the short story in the West in the 19th century are certainly present here. They're sort of organic to the material. That's one of the arguments I use to argue that these forms are inherent in human beings, and that writers don't so much choose them as sort of the writers are already born with the ability to organize their stories in this way, and we simply don't get around to categorizing it as short story or a play or something until later on. So in the little handout, in the little bit that I'm giving you, I've linked you to this handout, which you should definitely read. It talks about the elements, the 6 major elements of short story. And you will find all of those in the book of Ruth. And they're not just there, but they're there deliberately, and they mean something. Setting means something. Conflict means something. Point of view means something. Plot means something. Character and theme means something. And my argument is that it's a commentary upon this transition from a sort of shock and awe military culture to an assimilationist, more realistic culture. You don't have to accept that. That's just the way I understand how the material all fits together. But what you can find and write a very good paper about is the elements of short story in this short story. For instance, the character of Ruth is developed very carefully. Yes, it may have been based on a real person. It probably was based on a real person. But it can also be likened to a fictional character. You take a character out of Shakespeare or Steinbeck or Virginia Woolf, and they're shaped in the same way. And the character is a commentary on something else. So a character is given characteristics by a writer because the writer wishes to reflect on that character to some other larger point that they're trying to make. The word for this is foil, F-O-I-L. And what it means is it's like a foil in fencing where I'm coming at you and you turn my thrust to the side. That's what those things around the wrist are for in fencing. They turn the thrust. That's called a foil, or a dramatic foil, which we'll come back to when we look at the little play called Job. A dramatic foil is designed to turn the attention. So the character is giving characteristics and acting as a foil to turn your attention to something else, something larger upon which the writer is commenting. So that's the end of the little Ruth lecture. Please go through this. It's the handout that's linked for you there. This is a very good one, which I borrowed from some university. I've forgotten where I got it now. And then, if you want to, a good suggestion for a paper for this unit is to take this little story of Ruth as a short story, as a unit in and of itself short story, and then talk about those elements and what they mean and how they reflect other things. And then if that's not enough, there are plenty of other pieces that have short story elements, like I'm thinking Abraham and Isaac on the mountain, that's got short story elements to it. Jacob and Esau, Cain and Abel, those second son stories also have short story narrative elements to them. So it's a very rich vein to mine. It would be a good way to stay completely literary and avoid the theological. Okay, so that's the Ruth lecture. I'm stopping now. I'll get this one up for you, and then I'll talk about the other two major readings for this week. Thanks. See you soon.